Are you someone who struggles every year deciding what gifts to get your friends and family for the holidays? Well, if you're like me and the answer is yes, then I may have a solution just for you. This year, I used my 3D printers to make 3 Deadpool helmets for my family just in time for the holidays. And if you stick around, I'll show you how. First things first, we need a 3D model of the helmet that we can print. And there are a lot of them out there. I ended up using the Dio 3D models, specifically the Deadpool 3 helmet, which is for my brother-in-law, and the Lady Deadpool helmet, which would be for my mom and sister. Now that I know which models I'm going to print, the next question is, how do I make sure these are going to fit them, and how do I keep it a surprise? I've made a lot of helmets, most of which they've seen and worn themselves, so if I were to ask them for head measurements, I think I'd blow my cover. Luckily, since they've worn some of my helmets before, I know exactly which ones do and don't fit, so I have all the information I need. Starting with the one for my brother-in-law, he has a slightly bigger head than I do, and he was just barely able to fit into my own personal Deadpool helmet, which was printed at 100% scale, so for his, I just scaled it up 3 to 5% and I knew it would fit just fine. As for the Lady Deadpool helmets for my mom and sister, they both have smaller heads than I do, so I knew if I scaled this helmet to fit me, they would have plenty of room. This helmet by default is significantly smaller than the regular Deadpool helmet, so what I did is I used the regular Deadpool helmet as a sizing reference and uniformly scaled the Lady Deadpool helmet so that they were the same size, and it worked out perfectly. In order to maximize the quality, I printed the outer shell of the helmets on my K1 Max, P1P, and A1 combo at a 0.16mm layer height, while the eyes and eye frames, I decided to resin print those on my Saturn 8K and Saturn 4 Ultra. We've got a lot of printing to do, so with all that being said, let's get started. With all the parts printed, the next step is to assemble the helmets using 8x2mm magnets, which I glued into place using super glue and an instant spray activator. It's worth noting that these helmets have a lot of magnet holes. I didn't use all of them, I only used as many magnets as I needed in order for the helmets to stay assembled. The best thing about these helmets is that they require little to no sanding whatsoever. I did, however, give the helmets a coat or two of duplicolor filler primer just to fill any imperfections that may exist. From there, these helmets are ready to be painted. To start, I primed all of the helmets using a Rust-Oleum flat white primer. As for the base coat, I used a Rust-Oleum Gloss Apple red paint, applying multiple coats across all the helmets until I had even coverage. As for the iframes, I've found with Deadpool helmets that using this black Plasti Dip gives really good results. Plasti Dip is a flexible, rubberized coating that gives whatever you're painting a really unique texture and leather-like appearance. I did have to spray more coats of this stuff than I probably should have. I think my mistake was priming the iframes white, which made it difficult for the Plasti Dip to get even coverage. If I primed the iframes with a flat black instead, it probably would have gone a lot smoother, but it all worked out in the end. With the helmets painted, I decided to add some light weathering using an airbrush. I added some shading along the seams of the mask as well as behind the ears just to add some more depth and detail. I also dry brushed some shading onto the eyes themselves. I think it adds a bit more realism to the eyes, and I finished by giving them a pass of this Vallejo gloss varnish. With that, the eyes are ready to be installed. You'll notice the iframes have magnet slots, which is because they're meant to be interchangeable in order to have different facial expressions. I, however, am fine with the default eyes that I had already printed, so to save some time and magnets, I just went ahead and hot glued the eyes onto the helmet instead. One of the last things I did was print these custom Deadpool themed helmet stands that I found on MakerWorld. I'll leave links in the description to where you can find them in case you want to make these for yourself. And with that, all three of these helmets are done. I ended up finishing these a little earlier than I had planned, so they sat around collecting dust for a month before it was time to give them to my family. It was pretty time consuming making 3 helmets at the same time, but the end result was totally worth it. The helmets fit my family members perfectly, and they ended up loving them. I'm really happy with how these turned out, plus I'm one step closer to turning my entire family into Deadpool variants. I hope you enjoyed what you saw. Do consider sticking around if you want to see more builds like this in the future. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time with the next project.